All right, we are live with the TwinSpires Jury. I'm Ashley Anderson here with James Scully and Darren Sicali to talk our best bets and fades of the week for the Preakness Stakes Day card at Pimlico. We'll talk some Black Eyed Susan Day racing as well and some Churchill racing. And Darren, I'll start things off with you. Let's jump right in with our best bet of the week. Where are you going to play that?
Yeah, we are getting pretty creative. There's a horse that I like quite a bit in the James Murphy Stakes, which is race 9 at Pimlico, that if he won and I didn't give him out, I would feel foolish. And it's number 3, Massif, who's 20-1 on the morning line. Now, I admit this horse is always going to be at the mercy of pace and trip because he is a deep one-run closer. But if you go back and you watch his return to the races back on April the 13th at Keeneland, he made a premature and aggressive wide move going into the far turn where he moved past about 4 or 5 horses pretty willingly. He then kind of leveled off a little bit in the stretch. And then once he got re-engaged with another runner, he really put his head down and reached to the wire and picked up a couple of more coming down to the finish. It's the exact type of effort you want to see with a horse making his first start back off the bench. Brittany Russell has good numbers second time off the bench. And I think that the fact that they're taking a horse that is still eligible for an entry-level allowance condition and moving him into this stakes opportunity, I take that as a positive indicator. I also think if the race holds to what we're seeing on paper, and you have to remember that there is rain in the forecast, but if Lucky Jeremy is in the field, if Twirling Point is in the field, if Speediness is in the field, along with horses like Buck and Dreamer and Abrumar and Tokyo, there's a lot of speed on paper potentially in this race. We need to hope that it stays there. And if it does, I think Mastiff has a chance to, at the very least, get a good piece of it. But we're going to give him a big plug as our best bet at a huge number, Ashley.
And Brittany and Sheldon Russell, red hot already at Pimlico. So definitely like those two with that connection there. So, James, I'll move it over to you. What's your best bet?
Well, I like the 20-1 tab. I like nothing wrong giving out a long shot, and I'm gonna follow in the same footsteps. My best bet's gonna be number 1 Highland Chief, 12-1 on the morning line in the Dinner Party Stakes on Saturday, the race before the Preakness. Highland Chief is a 7-year-old who back in 2022 won the Grade 1 Man of War and the Grade 3 Sycamore before competing in the Breeders' Cup Turf. And then after that unplaced effort at Keeneland in the Breeders' Cup Turf, he was unraced of all 2022. He came back off of a 16-and-a-half-month layoff on April 20th at Keeneland in the Grade 2 Elkhorn. And I thought he performed very respectably just to split the field in fifth that day. Since the winner of that race, Silver Knot, came right back and won the Man of War last weekend. Missed the Cut, who ran second in there, was coming off back-to-back graded stakes wins for John Sadler. And Bold Act, who was third as a favorite, was coming off a really nice win in the Group 2 City of Gold in Dubai, and really a classy horse. So I thought that was a really strong field. I think he's getting class relief, Highland Chief, after competing against those top three in the Dinner Party. And I like the fact that Grand Motion brings him right back on a 4-week rest after a 16-and-a-half-month layoff. That's a good sign that that race didn't take anything out of him. I'll look for him to move forward off of it and get a ground-saving trip from the rail. Has to cut back to a mile and an eighth, but if I think he could get the right trip from the inside and be there in the stretch to challenge for the upset, Ashley.
I'll be talking about this race for my fade as well. It's a difficult race for sure. I wasn't exactly sold on any one horse, but I know I want to fade Emmanuel, which I'll talk about soon. But my best bet is number 11, Witty, at 9-2 in race 11. I don't quite have the long shot that you all have for your best bet. But at 9-2, I like Witty, who can win on the turf and the dirt. This is the turf sprint and stakes at 5 furlongs. Now with rain in the forecast, not sure that we'll take this event off the turf or not. It's a stakes race, so maybe we'll try to stay on the turf. But as I said, Witty has wins on the dirt as well, and this is a very versatile horse. Has 3 wins in 2 seconds from 5 furlongs as well, so I like him at the distance. Has Tyler Gaffalione aboard, and trainer Elizabeth Merriman is 5 for 11 in non-graded stakes with a positive ROI, and 6 for 14 with horses that won their last race. There's a lot of early speed signed on in this race, and Witty is the lone true closer, so I'm looking for him to close late. Beer Can Man is to his outside, dropping in class. I think we have a chance to beat Beer Can Man here. I'll probably play him underneath in my exacta, but playing number 11 Witty on top.
Yeah, Beer Can Man was almost my fade, Ashley. I don't like him at all from post 12. I know he's got a lot of back class to him, but I just think the trip is going to be very rough for him. And you've got a horse that has run in the state of Maryland 8 times in his career and has never been worse than second.
Yeah. All right, well, let's talk about, we already kind of gave out a few horses that we're going to fade at a short price, but James, who do you have?
I'm gonna fade, number 2 Prevalence in the Maryland Sprint. He's the 5-2 morning line favorite off of an allowance win at Keeneland. And we went through this 2 weeks ago with the Derby with Fierceness, who was the fastest horse in the race, but he was the type that had never strung together back-to-back wins. And to me, Prevalence is a less talented version of Fierceness. He basically runs well when he has no adversity. This last allowance race at Keeneland is a perfect example. He broke from an outside post, had a real easy trip. He surged to a clear lead on the backstretch. He was kept out there, never had pressure on either side of him throughout the race. Everything went his way this day. It's the same thing when he won a Grade 3 stake a couple of years ago. Everything went his way. On Saturday, Prevalence is drawn in post 2. He's got a bunch of speed to his immediate outside. He's going to be taking pressure. He's going to have to work out a trip. Those are not favorable circumstances for a horse that has really shown a propensity to disappoint when, he doesn't have everything just like he likes it. And I'm going to try to beat Prevalence in the Maryland Sprint Stakes, Darren.
Yeah, don't blame you at all. Kind of an oddly campaigned horse. They've tried him short on turf, long on turf. They run him on synthetic. And like you said, unless things kind of fall completely into place for him, he doesn't just get beat, but he's run very poorly. So that's the type of favorite that I definitely want to try to beat. I'm going to try to beat Emmanuel in the Grade 3 dinner party. I know Ashley has some similar thoughts here. This is a similar horse to the angle that James is talking about with Prevalence. When he gets things his own way, he's really good. When he runs in a good spot and he's got to kind of overcome a little bit of adversity, or he doesn't get exactly the trip he wants, or he's a little bit wide, he's not as good. The Grade 3 Canadian turf, the Grade 3 poker, those wins. I mean, Siege of Boston is a nice horse. Ice Chocolate is a nice horse. But it's almost like he needs that type of competition. And when he goes in against a tougher field, he's just not the same horse. And the other issue and concern that I have with him is that his efforts over ground with a little bit of give in it have not been solid. So I'm a little bit concerned about what he's going to do over less than firm turf, which is a certainty or near certainty come Saturday. I much prefer a horse like Beatbox, who was compromised a little bit by Tripp in the Muniz in a race that came back really fast with a big figure. I much prefer a horse like Running Bee, who I think is going to work out a good trip and is an up-and-coming horse for Chad Brown that's going to offer some value. You're going to get Gaffleon and Brown at a decent enough number, and how many times we see that happen in a turf race where we go, oh, my God, they connected 4-1. What was I thinking? So for me, Emmanuel is an absolute fade for me in the dinner party.
We're totally in sync here because Beatbox and Running Bee are my top 2. I also have Balnikov in there as well as a potential winner with Frankie Dettori aboard. But same reasons that you give for Emmanuel. We could get Yielding Turf. We just saw him at the Maker's Mark Mile. He had the early lead and he faded really badly over Yielding Turf as well. And then looking at his speed figures recently, low 90s, and there's a couple of runners here that have had higher speed figures in the last couple of races. So I just think from a Brisnet speed rating perspective, he doesn't really match up to what I like to see in a morning line favorite. So I'm also taking a stand against him, and obviously a lot of different horses you could back in this race, but a good chance to stand against a favorite here.
A horse that I will not be backing is number 8, Helms Deep, which is one of the more perplexing entries in a horse race that I've ever seen. The horse got beat 11 lengths in a $5,000 claimer 2 starts back, and I guess is a modern-day Rick's Natural star here. A lot of old-time racing fans will remember that horse, who was coming out of claiming races and was entered in the Breeders' Cup Turf in 1996. I don't know what this entry is about, but it's bizarre to say the least.
But that's
he could wind up being scratched. The stewards could take a long look at him and find something. Yeah.
He might get money because it's, the name will be popular with, I think it's Game of Thrones, or I don't know. It's been a while since I've watched that show. But let's talk about some promos before we move on to what else is happening this week. And so, Darren, what do we have available at TwinSpires?
Well, we got the Preakness money back offer. All the races, all eligible races, Friday and Saturday. Definition of an eligible race: 5 horses to get your money back for second, 8 horses to get your money back for third. Every race on the card that meets those conditions, you are eligible to get your money back. The entire card Friday, the entire card Saturday at Pimlico. Right now, the Preakness stands as a field of 8, so you would get money back for second and third there. Be sure to opt in, and those credits will be coming in just like Kentucky Derby Day. 15 minutes, 20 minutes or so after the race goes official, you'll have that money back in your account if the horse ran second or third in an eligible race, and you could just churn that money right back over. You don't have to wait 2-3 days to get credited. We also have a selected race money back at Churchill Downs this particular weekend coming up. Take a look at the races. We've added a race for Saturday. I think we have 3 races, 6, 7, and 10 that are being offered at Churchill Downs on Saturday. And the key to that we try to get a little bit wise here. We're trying to time it out where the Preakness is going to be over. You're going to get a little bit of a break in between the Preakness and a race at Churchill. And then the next race at Churchill, race 6, we're going to give you a money back opportunity there. So if you get your money back at the Preakness, you can wheel that right back into Churchill Downs as well. So those are our 2 big offers. We'll stick with the 2 marquee and lights offers this week, the 2 money backs, Preakness weekend, and the selected races money back at Churchill Downs, Ashley.
I'll be talking some Churchill racing in this segment. And real quick, because I don't want to get any hate on Twitter, Helm Steve is actually a Lord of the Rings reference, not Game of Thrones. Got to keep that straight. All right. Well, Darren, I'll stick with you on what else you're looking forward to this weekend.
The Pimlico Special on Friday at Pimlico. It's a race that is really rich in tradition and history, guys. Has been won by some of the great horses of the last 25, 30 years. In fact, I guess someone who's a traditionalist of the great New York handicap horses of the mid 90s, the Skipaways and Will's Ways and Formal Golds, where they had just unbelievable races throughout the mid 90s. And you had horses like Skipaway winning this race. Gentleman won this race. Mineshaft a few years later won the race. Real Quiet. Just some monstrous names have come through the Pimlico Special. And even though it's a grade 3, I think the race came up really, really strong. And you got a couple of horses in here that likely have end of the year Breeders' Cup aspirations. Kings Barnes, who's making his 3rd start of the year off a big win in the grade 3 Ben Ally at Pimlico. That was an impressive victory that day, where it looked like he might have been battling just a bit coming down to the wire, and then he leveled off and drew clear. He's only run one bad race in his career, and that was the Kentucky Derby. So Kings Barnes at age 4, looking to really make his a name for himself in the older handicap division. And the other one is Red Route 1, who's run 3 pretty decent races in a row in Graydon Stakes Company. The win in the New Orleans 2-back. Last time out just was completely trip compromised coming up the rail in the Oaklawn handicap, where Skippy Longstocking definitely got the jump on him that day. He's a deep 1-run closer that's always going to be at the mercy of pace and trip, but he should appreciate the 1 3/16, and he's always been a nice horse as well. So really good to see a really strong Pimlico Special this year, guys.
I remember 06. Invasor came from Uruguay, from South America. He went to Kieran McLaughlin's barn. He shipped him over to Dubai. He ran like 4th in like the UAE Derby. So,
beat him in the UAE Derby. I'll give you credit if you know this.
What's that?
Who beat Invasor in the UAE Derby?
Oh my gosh, I don't know.
What,
China Visit?
Cat, one of my favorite horses ever.
Oh, Discreet Cat, yeah. I saw him win at Saratoga later that summer. Yeah. But needless to say, Invasor came back in the Pimlico Special. It was like a 4 or 5 horse field. He was like the longest shot in there, and he won by open lengths and was brilliant. That started an undefeated season for him. On Friday, he had Invasor in the Pimlico Special. On Saturday, he had Bernardini in the Preakness, and they ran 1-2 in the Breeders' Cup Classic that fall. My what else is I'm going to mention on Friday, race number 8 is the Allaire DuPont Distaff. And that's the first of 15 stakes at Pimlico over the next 2 days. And it also marks the first stakes attempt for number 2, Lacey Be Good, who enters on a 5-race win streak for Tom Amoss. This was a filly that after running in Kentucky last summer, got a time off, broke her maiden in late October at Delta Downs, followed with 3 straight wins after that one. And then she shipped Oaklawn for this allowance race. I liked in this race where the 3-horse makes a real serious run at her in upper stretch, and then she has another gear left here to pull away and win by about a 3.5 length margin. A very encouraging performance shipping out of Delta Downs for this up-and-coming daughter of Good Magic. One thing about this Allaire DuPont, I didn't see a lot of true speed in the field. I think Tyler Gaffleone is going to, basically, if nobody else, comes out there winging it, he's going to look to be showing the way from the inside. And I give Lacey Be Good a chance to run well at 10-1 in the Laird DuPont. Ashley.
Ashley, I'm just going to jump in real quick since we're talking about the 15 stakes races at Pimlico. I want to give a shout out to my buddy Jordan. He's one of the owners of Adelphi Racing, and he actually is a CYO basketball coach on Staten Island and coaches the team that's our rival in our division. But we've got a great relationship, and we talk racing together. And he's got Royal Poppy and the Skip-At Stakes that they're pretty excited about. Having Frankie Dettori aboard, told me that in his last start, it's kind of a lackluster beginning, was an odd race, and they look for that horse to bounce back. So wanted to give him a plug and Adelphi Racing a plug and wish them a lot of luck in the Skip-At.
Cool little basketball connection there. I was going to say too, James, there's another long shot I thought was interesting that also has a 5-win streak in the same race that you were betting, and I like number 7, Intrepid Dream at 8-1, and think has a shot here too with Jaime Rodriguez aboard, who's doing really well at Pimlico, and this horse is 6 or 7 for their career. Yeah. So, 2 good prices though, so we'll see who comes out.
There's another. That's a filly that missed more than a year. Came back. She's won 2 in a row, stepping up in a little bit. But that was a nice stakes win. It was a short field, but I like the way she did it.
Well, I'll take it over to Churchill Downs. We're going to host the 1.5-mile Louisville Stakes, a grade 3 on the turf on Saturday. This is race 7. We have that money back offer. And number 8, Bold Act, even money here, but looking to bounce back off a loss in the Elkhorn where stablemate Silver Knot won and then came back and won the Manowar Stakes last weekend as well. Now, if we stay on the turf, I think Bold Act is a pretty obvious choice here. He has a Brisnet Prime Power rating that's 20 points higher than the next closest horse. You don't see that too often, but I think the stat is, and James, you might know this better than me, I think the stat with Brisnet, if you have a Prime Power number that's 10 points higher than the next closest horse, that runner wins, I think, 50% of the time, something crazy like that. So 20% or 20 points higher, I don't even know the win percentage on that one. But Bold Act, I think, should have a better trip this time around for Charlie Appleby. And if we come off the turf for any reason, there's a couple of longer shots here. Number 3, Avenue, I think, could be interesting at 12-1. Guntown at 30-1. I'm sure those odds will come way down, though, if we're on the main track. And then number 10, Utah Beach, I think, looks good on the turf or the dirt, but that's 7-2, so not as exciting of a price. But if we stay on that turf, I'm 100% going to say Bold Act gets this win.
I didn't like the ride Dettori gave Bold Act. I mean, I was on Silver Knot, so I'm not complaining. Yeah. But I thought he got him all in trouble and pinched and tight on the turn and even an upper stretch. He just didn't have the best trip.
We had a nice exacta last week of Silver Knot and Ohana Honor.
Yeah. Nice exacta there. You know, I hit that.
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
Well, to close things out, we're going to talk the Preakness Stakes and give our picks in that race. So, James, who do you have?
Well, I just want to bring up, first of all, the pace projections. I've seen a lot of projections of Imagination making an easy lead from post 8 with the scratch in the Preakness. But Seize the Gray is drawn to his inside, and it will be post 5 with the scratch and move. And last time out in the Pat Day Mile 2 weeks ago, he showed high speed. He was chasing Valajos through 22 and 44 and 3 opening splits. I mean, he ran 44 and change himself. I think that 4-time Preakness winner Dwayne Lucas knows that Seize the Gray's only chance in the Preakness is wire to wire. And, you know, the coach, Dwayne Lucas, essentially stole the 2013 Preakness wire to wire with Oxbow. So I'm looking at Seize the Gray trying to get out there on the front end. I expect him to send hard with Jamie Torres. You'll have him and Imagination up there setting things up. I like number 3, Catching Freedom, to prove best from off the pace. I think it's going to be Louisiana Derby runners 1-2. I'll take Tuscan Gold for my second pick, and I'll use both runners on multi-race wagers. I got a 3-8 in the Preakness. Who do you got, Darren?
Yeah, I've talked myself
into I wanted to give Darren a shout out because on Derby Day, we had that little live paddock hit that I don't know if you can find on Twitter anymore, but Darren gave out Seize the Gray in the Pat Day Mile, and then we even got the password in that live hit. But yeah, Darren was on fire with that pick. So sorry, just wanted to give you your flowers.
Hey, listen, I'll take it any way I can get it. Every day at the track should be like Derby Day, especially Derby Day 24. I wouldn't have to work for a living if we could do that every weekend. I've talked myself into a similar pace scenario to what James just described. With the two Lucases lined up next to each other, I just, knowing racing and knowing Lucas, there's no way that those two horses just allow imagination to steal this race wire to wire. I agree with that. I think Just Steel is going to work out a really good trip, though. And if you look at the Ragazine sheets like I do, he completely bounced to the moon in the Kentucky Derby. Now, he also got one of the more ridiculous rides you've ever seen in the Kentucky Derby because he broke in a little bit of a tangle. And what they were doing, chasing the speed and having him in between Fierceness and Track Phantom and pushing the pace, I have absolutely no idea what the purpose was there. The switch to Joel Rosario means you're probably going to see a much more, I won't say a conservative ride, but I'll say a more calculated ride here to try to get this horse in behind Seize the Gray and Imagination. I think he's going to sit third in a dream pocket spot right behind him. I think Mystik Dan is going to clear the three inside runners pretty easily and get over to his favorite spot on the rail. And I think he's going to be in a situation like he was in both the Southwest Stakes and the Kentucky Derby. But the way I'm going to play the race, Just Steel is the value for me. So this is a try-key box. What that means is you need Just Steel to finish first, second, or third, and two of the other three horses have to round out the trifecta. I bet it this way because Just Steel is the price of the four. I think Mystik Dan's going to run well. I think he's going to get a great trip along the rail again. He's going to get a track that he loves because you know how he freaked in the slop in the Southwest Stakes. The speed figures, from a speed figure standpoint, these are the four horses. I know people are going to be on Tuscan Gold, and while I don't completely dismiss him, I don't necessarily think there's going to be value because he's got a little bit of wise guy buzz to him the last few days. And I think Imagination is going to be good enough to hang on potentially for a piece, and Catching Freedom has a chance to close for a share. But for me, the Arkansas Derby is the race you want to be coming out of as a 3-year-old. And I'm going to key off that angle here with Just Steel and Mystik Dan as my top two.
Yeah, speaking of the Arkansas Derby, I was all about Muth, and this has really made things a little tough for me.
But I think he was probably going wire to wire. So that scratch really changed everything.
It really did, and I've been struggling with how I see this playing out, and ultimately I did land on the other Baffert runner, who I don't feel quite as confident in, but hey, this horse was a $1 million yearling purchase, so something special, and hasn't faced really that large of fields over in California, but improving Brisnet speed figures, beating a neck in the Santa Anita Derby by Stronghold, and having Frankie Dettori aboard. I'm going to look for him to try to get out front early, potentially go gate to wire like National Treasure. Of course, that was the trip I was expecting Muth to get instead. But, this has been tough for me. Tuscan Gold, fits a profile that I look for in the Preakness with Chad Brown. It kind of reminds me a little bit of early voting, but kind of decided to shy away from Tuscan Gold. Love Catching Freedom as a closer. Love the horse. I've met the horse. I like him a lot. But I'm just going to go with Imagination and stick to that early speed type and hoping to get that early lead. And, early speed really has done well at the Preakness the last 10 years. So I'm looking at Baffert. He's got 8 Preakness victories, and I'll stick with that 6-1 price.
Right. Ashley, if I get enough Muth backers to just follow the Baffert horse to Imagination, he's going to be favored by post time.
I know.
I'll feel that would make me happy. I do think his last race was by far his best race. I mean, I didn't think the San Felipe or the other races were all that much, but I thought that race against Stronghold, he showed a lot of courage. Stronghold ran by him. He came back and battled him to the wire. So that's a good effort for him. As far as Muth goes, you can look at his numbers, at least his Thorograph numbers, and every time he's run a career best, he took a step back. But Lucas, these horses take a step back for him, and then they typically just come back to form. So I do think that's a good point about that regression in the Derby off of a huge effort in the Arkansas Derby, and he could be poised for a rebound. I just am I'm keen on the Louisiana Derby, so I'll get the first place finisher and the third.
Yeah, I'm going to say the same thing going into this Preakness as I said last year about National Treasure, which obviously didn't work out. I just don't know how good Imagination is, and I really struggle with the California prep races now more than in the past because they're out on an island. They used to be where some of them would come to New York and they would run in a race. They go back to California, or they go to Arkansas and come back to California. Now they're just out there running against each other. And I just don't know how good those horses really are. And Stronghold ran fine in the Kentucky Derby. He made probably an early move into a strong pace that might have cost him a little bit. I thought he ran pretty well considering, but it didn't give me any type of over the top feelings where I think Imagination then now stacks up against the best of the crop. So I wish I had a more concrete opinion about him, but it's just such a weird intangible because these other horses have run against each other, whether it's in preps, they moved around a little bit, or the Derby. With Imagination, it's just trying to figure out how good he is, and there's really no comparison to kind of reach a conclusion.
So anyone have any strong feelings on Uncle Heavy, or how do you say it, Mugatu?
Uncle Heavy and Mugatu has no chance.
No chance.
He has no chance. Uncle Heavy, if you like Uncle Heavy, the race in the Withers was fine. He was compromised by post and start in the Wood Memorial, where he got off badly and was far behind from the 13 hole. And then in the stretch, he was near a horse that clipped heels and went down. I don't think he was going to be any better than fourth in the Wood Memorial, but if you want to hold on to something, he's now second race back off the layoff because he missed some time training between the Withers and the Wood, so he could cycle forward. But, and the very big caveat is, he has never run a race remotely fast enough to win this particular race. So, I mean, but again, you're going to get well, you never know because there's so much money in these pools. Nobody ever goes off the price that they should as a long shot. But if you like him, you're going to get a big number. But, would it shock me if he clunked up for fourth? No, but that's probably his ceiling.
He does have two really sharp recent workouts, and he's picking up Iraad Ortiz Jr., who's still looking for this one.
And I respect
that's going to hurt his price.
Yeah, I respect Butch Reed. I respect Butch Reed to no end. I mean, he is a trainer that's not extremely well known on the national scale. He's been based at Parks pretty much his entire career. But, when he shows up somewhere with a horse, you got to pay attention to them. He's brought horses into New York several times in stakes races the last few years that have flown under the radar, that have run extremely well. He's an excellent horseman, and I definitely respect him. But, I also recognize that this horse is going to need to take a huge step forward from a speed figure standpoint.
Yeah, this is definitely an interesting field now. With Muth out, it really just opens up a lot of things, in my opinion. Maybe some people don't think Muth was going to do anything, but we'll see what happens on Saturday. And of course, head to TwinSpires for those promos for Preakness Stakes Day and for the Black Eyed Susan card. And we'll be back next Thursday with more best bets and fades. Good luck with the Preakness.
Pegasus.
Pegasus, nice.